Legally Clueless has teamed up with She Walks, an initiative by Johnnie Walker that is spotlighting and celebrating women who are doing incredible work that's impacting communities. And in this episode, we get to meet Njeri Mwangi, who is not only creating impactful stories, but she runs an organization called Pawa 254 that is using art to push for better governance.
So my name is Njeri Mwangi. I am many things. I am an investigative reporter. I run an organization called Pawa 254. I am a biker. I am a road safety ambassador. I'm also an artist. It's just that you haven't experienced my art. And then I'm a mother, and I'm a wife. When I met my husband, he was a photographer. And he covered the post-election violence. We then used that as a street exhibition across the country. And for me, there is when I was like, oh, look at that. Look at what you can do with art. And then it was just photography. And we started Pawa 254 to be able to bring photographers initially at first as a place where they would explore what they can do with their photography. But before we could blink, we were attracting all kinds of artists. And they were coming and they were meeting and they were mixing and they were doing all sorts of things together. And we're like, this is such a boiling pot of so many things. And people would sing about their issues, personal, national, community. They would just write things and create things that spoke to social issues. And we're like, wow. Literally the power of art and what it can do. But it started with the photography. I was raised in a rather privileged background. I am the third born in a family of 4, and I grew up in church. So very controlled environment. It felt like this is how everybody lives. I was not very aware of the marginalized community. It was not as real until when I was much older. And then when I realized that, I was like, oh my God, what can I do? What can we do? And by then I had a baby and I was married. And we're like, yeah, but what can we do? What can I do in my capacity? And so it was just at the same time that we started Pawa 254 and inviting and creating a space that is conducive, a space where people can come and explore. Not every artist knows that they can use their art for any change or is even socially conscious and can make that connection. So what this place then does is it introduces you to that. And if you're willing and able, then you do. Otherwise, you can still create art and just entertain because we need entertainment. We need something to humor us. And not that the art that artivists used is not entertaining. It also is because we laugh about it. Yeah, we laugh at ourselves. We laugh at our leaders. We laugh at our children. We laugh at our spouses. We laugh at authority. You know, it makes you laugh, but it also makes you think critically about, actually, this is not right. And then it can spur you to change, to, whether it will be by yourself or to get together with others and fight for something that you truly believe needs to change. We've been around since 2012. And I think that was the time we started doing we were involved in a lot of protests. Then there were not many people in the streets, whether people didn't believe it, whether people were afraid. But it was one thing for us that we knew we could take art to the streets in that sense, because then it's visual. You're left with a visual and you remember that. There was the state burial where we took a lot of coffins and then we burnt them outside of Parliament. There was the M-Pigs, which we had pigs and we got blood and then from a slaughterhouse. And what then happened, which we didn't anticipate, was that the pigs would lick the blood. And yet we were talking about the pigs being like our leaders who are just living off Kenyans to the last, you will die as they just suck your energy and take everything from you. But I think because of those projects because of those times And people have then gone to see that you can use your art. And there's more people that have become vocal about social issues, which is what Pawa is about, yeah? Just using active artistic expressions to drive social change and for active citizens to drive change in the country, the change that they want to see. You have to be the change that you want to see. Like, I know it's a cliche, but then we are so keen on pointing fingers, them, but we don't see the fingers that are pointing at us. And as Kenyans, we have a responsibility, and we need to be very clear on what that responsibility is. Our responsibility doesn't just end at the ballot. So seeing how people have become conscious and aware of that responsibility with time, and I think for me a culmination was last year, June protest about the finance bill. I think people then saw what their responsibility is, that we can't continue to be looted and taken advantage of and taxed. And we just, okay, it's getting bad. That we have the power to change that. We have the power to do something. But more so, collective power. We would be arrested, we would be threatened. We still are, but now we are so many. Who are you going to take? Who are you going to leave? What are you going to do? We are so many now. And we are louder, and we want change, and we want it now. And it can't wait. So those who are younger, my children can now go to the streets because they can be in the streets. And they're very vocal about what they want. They're very clear about what they want. They can also see what is wrong and where the wrong is. Yeah? And I think for me that has been the greatest accomplishment, that the conversations that we were having 10 years ago are now being had at large scale by so many people all over. In groups I'm in with other moms, guys, we need to talk about this, by the way. Yes, and people go on about it. Where people said, no, let's keep this group, let's not have any politics. People are like, but this politics is affecting us. Aren't you affected by the tax? Are you still in business? You know, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. So these conversations people are having bolder conversations. These conversations are happening and people are restless. And that is a good thing. I think last year, the place of art it helped with the awakening, like the mass awakening. But it came through the music, because you could hear people sing along in the streets, the same song. Everybody knows it. Everybody knew different songs. You will hear it from this part of the street, you will hear it 3 streets away. Yeah? And that was powerful because it kept people together, that harmony, that oneness. It united people in the cause, and also just the creativity I know there was coffins and what was being buried in those coffins, or at least the symbolism of it, that we don't just come out to the streets and walk and march and go away. We want it to be memorable, we want it to be seen, we want you to not mistake. This is what we are saying and this is how we are saying it. But it was that engagement, that emboldenment of artists finding spaces wherever they were, in church, in song, in buses, in public spaces, and just speak. Let everybody know, guys, we need to do something. And it's up to all of us. So it helps to draw people towards the same thing. And probably because it was the finance bill that sort of united, or at least gave us a thing to focus on. And I think that was the most incredible thing, because I don't know what else would have brought us together like that, apart from that projection of rage and anger and fury, and that we're able to channel it out through those chants, Anguka Nayo. And it became global. I mean, I was in South Africa, I had people sing it, not just Kenyans. I was in Brazil, I had people sing it. Or even if you started singing it, other people from other parts of the world would sing it, and I was like, wow. I've never been prouder to be Kenyan than I was last year, because we showed the world. And I think because we showed the world, even other parts of the world, it recreated that awakening. Like, did you see what Kenyans did, by the way? Even us, we can do this. So it began what I am calling an African revolution, because young Africans and the population of Africa is mostly youth, and youth want something new. Youth want systems that work. Youth want opportunities. Youth don't want to be sent out there. Why don't we build our own? Why don't we build our own countries? Youth want to be here where it's home. Whatever opportunities are there, let them be. But I will not go there because of lack of opportunity here. So they're demanding that opportunities be created in our homes, in our countries. I feel like I've been afraid all my life of different things. But the one I can, or at least moments I can pick in my life is when I started riding a motorbike. I was so afraid of falling. I thought I would die. Like my head would go one way and my limbs would I'd be strewn all over the road. But luckily, when I was doing my training, I fell. And I had just been taught how to fall. So when I fell, my bike went and I went into fetal position and I followed my bike. And I realized, and then I stood, I picked my bike and then I rode. And by the time I was leaving, when the adrenaline had gone down, I was like, oh my God, I fell. And I started touching myself. I'm like, and I'm still alive. Like I can walk. I realized fear is healthy because it keeps you safe. But there's the unhealthy fear that you can't move. You can't even get out. You can't do anything because you're afraid of what could happen. So let it happen. Yeah, let it happen. Because I fell, I learned that I could fall again and get up. I will get up and I will do better. Yeah, because I did better when I fell. You have to know that there's only so much you can control. Yeah, but if you want to live a certain life, then you have to do what you need to do. Because stop waiting for other people to do it for you. It's good if you can tag other people to do it with you, not for you. And if it's for you, then what is it? What is your contribution to the action? Yeah? Maybe for you it is to be very vocal on social media because we know Kenyans on Twitter. Yeah? Maybe for you it is to help pay for a designer or a website. Maybe for you it is to get out there, go to the meetings and talk to the community. Your community, whether it is church, whether it is your neighborhood, whether it is your school, whether it is in the streets, wherever you can do it. For some, it could be when there's a protest, you're there, you're in the millions. There are people who cannot for different reasons. So I think it's knowing what your contribution to the change that you want is, and then do it. Do not be afraid. Don't let fear stop you from doing anything. Because we do it afraid still. We don't do it because we're not afraid. We do it afraid still. And some of the fears that we have are down to being shot. Our house has been blown up. My husband has been shot from close range. How he did not die to date. Yeah, but do you stop? You know what you want. Will you get it? Maybe you will. Maybe not you, but your children and the children that your grandchildren will. Live your time now. Because you're here now. Live your time and make the difference that you can. If we were to push down a wall, if I start alone, I can only move it so far. Actually, I can't. I will hurt myself. But if I keep pushing it and I tell people why I'm pushing it, we become more people. We push. 10 years later, the wall hasn't fallen, but we are 1,000 people, maybe 10,000 people. The wall has not fallen. Then another few come and they push it and it starts, it's not fallen, but it's moving now. And then there are 20,000. And then some kids will be playing and they'll be upset and there'll be 100 of them and they'll go and push that wall and it will fall. Is it because of the 100 that the wall fell? No. It's because I started pushing that wall by myself, grazed myself, broke fingers, and then brought attention. But I believed that this wall must fall. And I did something. I started moving it. I talked to people who then became a movement. So you must believe in what you want to do. It only works if it's not just personal. I want to make so much money so that I can travel. How does that help the people around me? How does that help my community? How does that help my children, our children? When I talk about our children, I'm talking about all the children that are my children's age. Those are my children. Because those are the children. My children will be working with those children. My children will get married to those children. My children will live with those children. So those are my children. And what works for my 3 that came out of me must work for the millions that came out of others. Because that's a generation. And that's the impact that you have to see. That whatever, if you do good for yourself in a way that impacts many, in Kikuyu we say, weka weka niwe weika. When you do good, you do it to yourself. But it doesn't just serve you. It helps so many people. It serves so many people. And if you think like that, then you can see how that would work. And other people will buy in without convincing them so much. They can see why being a part of what you're doing is good for them. And then you're not doing it by yourself. So fear is good. Fear is good. Do it afraid. Do it anyway. All right. Let me show you my place. So this is Pawa 254. And here we do podcasts, we do live shows. It extends to this other side. Same podcast, depends with how many people or what you want in the background. If you want, we can do a green screen and you can have whatever you actually want in your background. So right now we're heavily on we're having a project called Rights, Inclusion, Transparency for Accountable Institutions. And it's in 4 counties. It's in Nakuru, it's in Kisumu, it's in Nairobi and Kajiado. And it's about the public finance management. What we've realized is we are not engaged because we don't know. So it's a bit of like civic education. It's about how do we engage with the budget. We are called for public participation. Why don't people go for these things? If we go, then we would say, no, we don't want a market, we want a school. No, we don't want a school, we want a hospital. No, actually, we want a playground. But we let so few people decide, and then we complain about the lack of amenities or misplaced budget needs because we don't show up for these things. But also even when we show up, how do we look at that budget? So that's one of the things that we're doing, trying to get people to become active and participate in budget processes, understand and participate in them, question and contribute, but not just in budget, but just public participation in all things that we're told this is going to affect you. Because when government comes back to us, but we are like, no, I'm too busy. Then they make decisions, then you were never there. So that's one of the things that we're doing. We also are looking to do an activism sort of academy, like a fellowship, where we talk about how you can use your art to sustain yourself, but also to drive social change. Like I said, there are people who just create art and enjoy the final piece, masterpiece, yeah? But then they're not necessarily very conscious about change. So if they could use that art for change, how much more would they be able to drive change? Because they already have a big platform. And that is going to be running, perpetually. It's a legacy project that we're working on. We have a podcast, we call it Pawa Pod. And then we have an online radio. And online because, getting a local radio station is very complicated. And since we wanted to be able to reach everyone, you just need to go onto YouTube or onto our Pawa online radio, and you can be able to listen to our shows.
This is your home for entertaining conversations that matter, and really what we do here on Pawa Radio is really mainstreaming conversations around activism. And so do catch us throughout the week for some amazing nail-biting conversations that you don't want to miss out. Pawa Radio, where we tune in and power up.
That's Pawa Radio. I don't even know what to say next. That's it. It's first of all, they're hosted by young people. And then we talk about all things youth, but also all things national importance. Whether it is the budget, whether it is security, whether it is AU I mean, we talk about all these things and how they affect us, even relationships, mental health, because the world has become, there's so much pressure and we're all trying to cope one way or another, and some are not coping as well. So even just how do we support each other? And it's an interesting space because people are able to feed into the conversation and be part of the conversation from different parts of the world, and that's exciting. It's a community-owned, community-driven station, and people talk about what matters to them. I think for African women, there's so many things we've been told we cannot do. There's so many roles that we've been assigned, and we need to come out from under that. We have to be in the kitchen, we cannot do some things. Those are such manly tasks. We are just as strong. If anything, we are stronger because we raise a family. We make sure that the budget, we make sure everybody's fed, we make sure everybody's asleep. We drive the family. So we are so much more capable than we have been made to believe. And we must start believing that because it is walking in that power that we will transform this continent. Not just this country, but we'll transform this continent. It's what our daughters are seeing us do or afraid of doing. So we need to break the cycle, break that pattern that we've been told we can't, that we've been told we shouldn't. Because I think in 2025, what we couldn't do, whether it's because we were told or because it was designed that way, in 2025, it has changed. A lot has changed. And let's walk out confidently and try whatever, and I mean whatever it is that you want to try. There's nothing we cannot do. If they can do it, so can we. What is good for the goose is good for the gander. So go out and be all and do all.